Audio recording for this meeting has begun.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, An Introduction to Proposal Writing. My name is Shantaria Charleston, and I will be the host and moderator for today's call. If you've not already done so, please ensure that you have access to both the audio and video portion of the webinar. To access the PowerPoint for today's call, please follow the link on your meeting confirmation email. All participants are in listen-only mode, which means your line is muted. However, we are very interested in your questions as well as your feedback, so today during the presentation, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box that will appear on the lower right-hand side of your screen. Today's webinar is being recorded. Both the recording and presentation will be available on HAC's website, www.ruralhome.org, shortly following the webinar. See several familiar names, not faces, see several familiar names today, but just a brief overview of the Housing Assistance Council for those of you that are not familiar with the Housing Assistance Council. HAC is a national nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. that assists local organizations with building affordable homes in rural America. With a mission to improve housing conditions for the rural poor, HAC places an emphasis on striving to serve the poorest of the poor in the most rural places. HAC emphasizes local solutions, empowerment of the poor, reduced dependence, and self-help strategies. HAC assists with the development of both single and multifamily homes and promotes homeownership for working low-income rural families through a self-help sweat equity construction method. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about HAC services or products, HAC may have an office near you. If you have questions or require assistance, please contact your nearest HAC regional office. The regional office locations as well as the phone numbers are currently being displayed on your screen. That information is also available via HAC's website, www.ruralhome.org. And so again, I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar, An Introduction to Proposal Writing. I will also move to introduce our speaker for today's webinar, HAC's own Kelly Cooney. Kelly is a housing specialist. She provides technical assistance and training on housing and organizational development topics, including housing development and finance, project feasibility, and nonprofit board effectiveness. Prior to joining HAC, Kelly worked as a development specialist for the City of Atlanta Fulton County Land Bank Authority. Kelly earned a Master's of City Planning degree from the Georgia Institute of Technology and a bachelor's degree in urban and planning from Miami University. And so with that being said, I'd like to welcome and turn the webinar over to Kelly.
Thank you very much, Terry, and thank you to everyone that has joined us today. Just a quick reminder for those that joined recently, and that is that your line is muted, but you are welcome to use the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to please submit any questions at any time during the webinar, and at the end we will go through the questions, answer as many as possible, and if I am unable to answer your question or don't get to it today, you can certainly follow up with me personally after the webinar. I would be very interested in working with you or hearing more about what challenges you may be facing. Today we're talking about an introduction to proposal writing, but please note that this is a vast topic and could be discussed at great length if we had the time to do that. In fact, grant writing and proposal writing is a career path for some folks. And so we cannot expect this webinar to provide you with all of the ingredients or a magic potion that will get all of your proposals funded, but we can seek to provide you with a reasonable foundation upon which you can begin to incorporate grant and proposal writing into your existing job duties and establish some basic principles to work from and aid you in your efforts. We have 4 agenda topics and goals for the webinar today, and they are to provide some perspective on grant funding and nonprofit organizations, to hopefully help you set some realistic expectations, provide you with some helpful things to have in place before you incorporate proposal writing into your daily activities, provide you with the common proposal elements and the key components and how to draft these various proposal elements. So let's jump in and try to set some realistic expectations for grant writing and proposal writing activities. Government grants often provide the largest part of a rural nonprofit housing organization's income. However, organizations such as yours should become wary when any specific grant or funding source comprises the vast majority of your revenue. If a specific grant program, such as the housing counseling program or the home program or a foundation that comprises a large portion of your funding pie, goes away, it is easy to see what can happen, and that would be that your organization can go hungry. Grant funds are very valuable, but they should not be your only source of income. And as we have seen over the years from both public and private sources, grant funds and charitable contributions are subject to fluctuations based on market volatility, political decisions, changing trends, and even changing interests from foundations and funders. Now, those of you that joined us last month for our webinar on a foundation for fundraising will have seen this slide, but I think that it is very important to discuss again to, like I said, provide some perspective on revenue and resources and grants for nonprofit organizations. So in this slide, let's take another look at why nonprofit organizations should seek to have a diverse stream of revenue and funding sources. This pie chart shows the breakdown of all revenue streams for all U.S. nonprofits in 2013. When we seek grant funds from government agencies, foundations, or wealthy benefactors, we are looking at the 2 pieces of the pie that are bumped out from the chart. And those are government grants at 8% and private contributions from foundations and individuals at foundations, businesses, and individuals at 13.3%. So for all nonprofits in America, these 2 sources comprise 21.3% of all revenue. In my experience, the ratio of government grants and private contributions for housing nonprofits is very different, and it tends to be much higher. There are logical reasons as to why that is the case and why these funding sources may be larger than 21.3%, the average for your organization. Many social service organizations, such as affordable housing organizations, don't have the ability to charge large amounts for their services. So these two largest pieces of the pie that represent potential 3/4 of all nonprofit funding get skewed by things such as tuition and hospital payments that go to nonprofit colleges and universities and nonprofit hospitals. So while those entities, and they are small in number, can skew these figures as a whole, it's still important to look at the pie and point out a few things. And those are that all nonprofit organizations, regardless of where they can get their funding sources from, are interested in grants. They're interested in government grants. They're interested in grants from foundations, businesses, and donations from individuals, and all of which would go into your proposal-seeking efforts. And human service nonprofit organizations, which I referred to earlier as social service nonprofits, but the tracking is human service nonprofit organizations that include affordable housing, food banks, education programs, after-school programs, anything that seeks to make neighborhoods and communities a better place, are almost a third of all nonprofits in the United States in terms of numbers, just in terms of numbers. So there's a lot of competition, and that's really what I'm trying to get at. We've got 21% of all the possible funding for all the possible organizations, but 100% of nonprofits are interested in those funding sources. And we, as affordable housing organizations, are in one of the largest categories that tend to rely disproportionately a lot on these two revenue sources. Bottom line is, the competition is fierce, and in order to succeed in proposal writing, you'll need to be organized, well-prepared, and knowledgeable. But before you dive in and begin typing away on your funding proposals, it makes sense to take stock internally. And hopefully it will save you time in the long run and even some potential embarrassment along the way if you take the time to check around within your organization and identify organizational policies and procedures that could impact your grant writing efforts. Other staff that write proposals, your organization's previous efforts at proposal writing, board member affiliations, and other up-to-date organizational information such as mission statement, goals, program details, financials, and so on. I recommend that you dedicate a file cabinet drawer and a folder on your computer or organization's network to store all of your completed proposals, regardless of who has written them. Case statement, if your organization has developed one and uses one for proposal writing and marketing purposes. Annual reports, financial documents, a copy of the audit, organizational chart, updated list of board members, and so on, things of this category. I also recommend that organizations talk to their board members and ask their board members to, every so often, maybe annually, complete a table or a chart that lists all of the board members' other organizational and business affiliations, important community officials that they may know, and other relationships that could be useful to your organization. And this chart or listing of who knows who and who the board members know could be helpful down the road in terms of opening doors, getting meetings, being the appropriate person to follow up or participate in meetings and so forth down the road. So one additional thing to keep in mind. Optimally, grant writing, proposal writing, and the research that goes into it is an ongoing process. not a mad sprint to the finish line whenever your organization realizes that money is getting tight. And I am sure that we are all familiar with the golden rule, and that is, she who has the gold makes the rules. And the foundations and government agencies have the gold, and they do not establish their funding calendars based on your organization's needs. Therefore, it makes sense to work consistently and establish a calendar of funding periods and proposal due dates. Review and seek to understand the grant maker's trends in funding and in categories in which they seek to make their contributions. Position yourself to be a more attractive grantee and ensure that you have all of the basic information needed and the time on your calendar to apply for grants of various sizes when their funding cycles are open. When researching grant opportunities, it's always good to look far and wide. It can't hurt. I, if possible, recommend carving out a little time consistently on your calendar each week or every other week to check out new resources, do a little ongoing research, and over time you will identify a variety of potential funders and create a calendar of funding cycles and various due dates. And in the downtime, when there aren't due dates or funding cycles that are open, you can spend your time drafting proposals to individuals and businesses that don't have a formal process for soliciting grants and donations. Okay. Before we review the typical grant components, let's briefly discuss why a proposal will get funded. And first and foremost, if you are applying for a competitive grant, that is that you read the directions and you follow the directions. I cannot stress this enough, and I'm always shocked at how few people really do this very well. No matter how good your project is and how strong your organization's reputation is, people just don't want to reward others that don't follow the rules. If I was asked what one thing has made my efforts in grant writing the most successful over the years, that would be that I seek to understand the proposal requirements backwards and forwards. And this is really key the longer and the more complicated the funding proposal is. I can't stress enough to just read the requirements several times, cut and paste them to create your own checklist so that you will not easily overlook something. Get out your highlighters and your sticky tabs and read the requirements again after you've completed your proposal to make sure that you have not overlooked anything. And I will give you just a quick off-the-cuff example. I was looking at some proposal requirements yesterday, and I've been flipping through this proposal on and off for the last couple weeks, knowing that it's something that I have to work on. And at some point, I lost a page of the proposal. So I had about, 8 pages printed out. And all of a sudden, I just noticed that it didn't make sense looking from one page to the next. And I actually was missing an entire page of requirements. And so for the last couple of weeks, in terms of thinking about it, I just had not had that. Had I gone and created my own to-do list, I wouldn't be in that situation where I just realized that I had been overlooking some things. Let's see. If you're soliciting funds through an open process or from donors that do not have a grant funding cycle, then it is important that your proposal be succinct and thoroughly address these other reasons why proposals do get funded. And those are that you are addressing an important issue. that your organization is qualified and can get the work done in a timely fashion, that your organization has a thoughtful plan. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting a little notice to speak louder, so please bear with me, and I hope this is helpful to everybody. Okay, getting back to why your proposal will get funded. Important issues: your organization is qualified to do the work, has a track record of doing the work. You have a thoughtful plan in place. You understand what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. You have strong leadership and management, financial management in your organization, and your proposal fits the objectives of the funders. Let's talk a little bit about why your proposal may not get funded. Some reasons other than just being a little unlucky or a little too late, a little too little too late, proposals may not get funded because you really need the money. Your organization is going broke. And unfortunately, it is sad, but too often it is true that no one and no funder wants to go down with a sinking ship. You may also not get funded if you have good intentions, because good intentions are not enough. Funders fund good projects. They do not just fund good ideas. You will definitely not get funded if the grantor cannot understand what you're talking about. And you will not get funded if the grantor does not believe that you, the staff, or your organization can be successful for whatever reason. Okay. Common proposal elements. Even if there are very clear instructions, or there are no clear instructions for the proposal that you are drafting, your proposal should seek to answer the questions that anyone parting with their money is likely to have. And so try to keep that in the back of your mind whenever you're drafting a proposal. Try to answer those questions that you would have if you were asked for money. So after you dispense with the social niceties of a cover letter, try to focus on the funder's most logical initial question. And that is, what am I about to read? What am I in for? And what is to come? So the proposal summary should give the reader a small taste of what is to come in all of the future pages. Other questions that you should seek to answer are, who are you? That's the introduction of the applicant. What is of concern? That is the problem statement. How do you and how does this proposal seek to change the situation that you are concerned about? Those are your goals and your outcome objectives. What will you do to make that change happen? These are your methods. How will I know if I made a good investment? That's the evaluation piece. How will I know if I made a really good investment, and will this organization leave me alone if I give them money one time? That's a sustainability piece of your proposal. And how much will this cost me? What will the project cost, and what will my money be used for? And now we're going to talk a little bit further about each of these common proposal elements. Okay. The cover letter, as I said, is a formal nicety, but it serves a practical purpose, and there is really no need to get too fancy. The first paragraph of your cover letter traditionally will indicate why the project that you are talking about is a good match for the funder's guidelines, and refer to any relationship you have with the funder. Did you meet with a program officer? Do you know a board member? Do their board members know your organization's board members? Did you hear somebody representing the agency speak at a conference? If so, casually name drop right here. If you're applying to a company, you can indicate how many employees volunteer for your organization or if a company executive serves on your board of directors. And the second paragraph of your cover letter should give a summary of the project and the ask amount. This is suitable for the program officer to use in internal documents that list all pending proposals. The third paragraph might note your organization's enthusiasm for the project and describe how other funding could be leveraged for this gift. If appropriate, based on your research, offer to host a site visit or provide additional information, or call the funder in a week or in 2 weeks to check on the proposal status and seek to answer questions at that time. You could indicate the contact person for the proposal who may be different than the executive director or the letter signer or the board president. Some writers will include an emotional story in their cover letter, but I'm a simple is better, and I tend to think that might be a little too much for the cover letter. The proposal summary should answer all the basic questions that the proposal reader has. It should seek to make the reader, the program officer, the government staff person, or whomever that is reading and evaluating the proposal, it should seek to make their life easier by giving them all the information they need, all the hard facts, to complete a score sheet, if there was one, or to fill in their database all in one place. So the proposal summary should be as concise as possible and address the who, the what, when, and the how much money. I recommend always saving the proposal summary for the end of your proposal writing process, and that is when you will know all the answers to these questions and they will not change. Right, your proposal introduction. Different funders will request different things if they require an introductory section. The most common feature of an introduction section is to introduce yourself, the applicant, to the reader, who is the funder. And if you are seeking to properly introduce yourself, you should address information about your organization. General information, how large, locations, number of staff, program areas, service areas, things like that. Organizational history, your organization's qualifications to do the work, and information about the staff. And if there are proposal requirements that have been presented, this section is likely to vary quite a lot from funder to funder. For example, some funders may want everyone's resume to be attached or incorporated into the proposal. Others may really want to know very specifically how many years of experience does each person have. Some others want a lot of information about your organization's financial capacity, and others may not. And this is why, if there are directions, it is important to read them very carefully and know what they include. Okay, the problem statement is also known as the statement of need. And this problem statement is the foundation for everything else that is in your proposal. It establishes the focus and the rationale for your funding request. Your problem statement should address the following two questions. One, what is the problem? What is the need? And how do you know that it is a problem? The need or the problem may be a national problem, such as the lack of affordable rental housing, but in your statement of need, you need to think locally, and you need to make sure that your statement of need addresses local needs. So if you have it, be sure to use relevant data for your target area, for your service area. Make the problem that you are discussing personal to the area and that is definitely going to be best. And be sure to answer the question, how do you know it is a problem? Like I said, with local evidence, using as much clear and effective data and statistics as you are able to get. When drafting a funding proposal, and specifically this problem statement section, it is important to recognize that the problem should not be your organization's need for something. Your organization's need for more money, more staff, or more training may very well be a problem, but typically it is not the basis for a strong proposal. Funders are less interested in funding your organization's need, but they are more interested in funding things that your organization can do to help your community. So please, if possible, do not confuse your organization's needs with the needs of your target population. Also, the problem that you are stating should not be the lack of a solution or not be the lack of a method to arrive at a solution. You should have a problem and then be able to follow up with the plan to address the problem that you've stated. And if all of that is not enough to do, it's really important that this section be concise and coherent, because you have a lot of things to talk about and you want to make sure that you save the time and the reader's mental energy for the things that are yet to come. Goals of the project. This is where you have an opportunity to clearly state what it is you intend to accomplish. You can include the quantitative improvements, and those are the things that you can count. I will build this many units. I will help this many families. This many households will have down payment assistance. So you get to quantify things. You also get to address qualitative improvements, other things that you may not be able to count as easily, but that could happen. Safer neighborhoods, revitalized communities, increased population in an area, whatever the case may be. It is certainly reasonable to include any trickle-down improvements that you are able to discern. And don't forget, though, that you will have to evaluate these things and evaluate your impact. So make sure that they are reasonable. The methods portion of a grant proposal is where you will explain what your organization will do to address the problem. This is your work plan, and details of your work plan or your methods section may include a description of the target audience and how to involve them in the project, where the project will take place, the activities that you will undertake, your project planning to date so far, each staff person's role in the project's execution, and a timeline of activities throughout the project period. Your evaluation section. There are a lot of important reasons to evaluate your programs, and only one of them should be because the funder has told you to do that. Other important reasons to be in a consistent habit to evaluate all of your organization's projects and programs are improving the program and your organization's implementation processes, defining the project's efficacy and funding sources, developing information for sound decision making for in the future, and to respond to regulators and accrediting agencies if you are responsible to them as well. A good evaluation will include quantitative measures and qualitative measures, and these are your outputs and outcomes. For those of you very familiar with some government grants, the quantitative measures are those that gather, Quantitative measures are those where you gather numbers for analysis. These are your outputs, and they include the things like the number of people that attend a session that you have, improvement rates, percentages that have gotten better, clients served, very quantitative things. Qualitative measures collect information that can provide rich details and demonstrate the impact. And these are your outcomes. Qualitative measures for some projects will actually help to demonstrate what those numbers mean in the community. And you can gather the data to evaluate your qualitative measures from a program using any variety of things. Some common ones that we see are pre- and post-tests. If you were doing education classes, for example, questionnaires and surveys of those that have participated in your programs and benefited from them, questions and surveys or interviews of clients, focus groups, or you simply may be able to review client files to get some of this information that you will need down the road to evaluate your program. Sustainability. A sustainability plan describes how you will replace the grant funds in the future. What you want to do is demonstrate to the grantor or the funder that your organization has the wherewithal to keep this project going. Whatever it is that has been funded should not, hopefully, crumble and wither away once this entity's funding ends. And grant makers and funders expect these days really to see a specific and realistic and documented plan for long-term viability. This is not just a statement that you'll work on it vaguely at some undetermined time down in the future. A complete sustainability plan will demonstrate how all grant funds will be replaced with potential sources or specific sources and amounts. And even though you want to have a complete plan in place, certainly everyone does realize that this is a work in progress and can change. What you really want to do is to demonstrate that your organization is thoughtful, has long-term financial considerations in place, and that your organization is impactful and does planning on many levels. So one thing optimally is to not say that any specific project or any specific program will continue to be funded solely by grants, if possible. That is less interest to funders. They'd like to know that there are other ways that a project or a proposal can be self-sustaining. So if possible, try to avoid that. You should, if possible, list the sources and amounts that you're talking about in terms of replacement funds. State where resources are committed for the continuation of the program, where they're pending, or where you think you could get funding in the future. And you may want to reference or even include letters from other partners, specifically your long-term partners. Okay. Excuse me. Your project budget should be clear, easy to read and understandable, and include expenses and income. Your program or project's expenses will fall within 3 categories. They are personnel, direct costs, and indirect costs. Your direct expenses include materials and services, professional services, land, marketing expenses, and so on. Your indirect expenses are the costs to support the management systems of your organization, and they are shared across all the various programs that you may implement. They are known as your administrative expenses or your operating overhead. Ideally, your accounting department has established a percentage of a program's direct expenses to cover the organization's indirect costs. In allowing an organization to include indirect expenses in its budget, a funder is recognizing that the grant program will use some portion of the agency's overall administrative resources, and not all funders do this. But things that can be included in the indirect expense section could be depreciation, the cost of maintaining facilities, and general administrative expenses such as the salaries of the executive director or the accountant and those staff that affect all aspects of implementation within the organization. Agencies can establish an indirect cost rate with the federal government, and that's when you have a negotiated percentage that is used to figure your indirect expenses when submitting applications to federal sources. Some grant competitions set the percentage that must be used for these indirect expenses at a very low level or an unreasonably low level, and you need to take that into consideration when establishing the budget for your project as a whole. Some funders will not allow grant funds to be used to cover any indirect expenses, and if a grant maker does not pay for all of these costs, you need to be sure that your organization can pay them or can make up the difference for any partial payments. Please recognize that indirect costs are a legitimate part of your budget and should be included even if the grant maker does not fund them. They are the cost of doing the business for your project or for your program. Don't forget to also address and include any program income. Your project may generate some income through the sale of a house, for example, but it may acquire the funding needed from a variety of different sources to get there. So you've used all of these different funding sources, and you've been able to generate some program income, and optimally you will discuss how that program income will be used in the future. Other aspects your budget really should consider are the reasonableness. Why are your costs reasonable? How do you know that they are reasonable? What have you done to be able to understand what your costs will be and how you can back them up? And obviously for a housing project, the way that you back up these costs would be very different than for a for a program that you are implementing. The house, it's very easy to get quotes and estimates and break things down by category. And for a program, especially one that's staff intensive, you need to really understand who the staff is, what the rates are, how much they charge, and so forth. You also want to have or be able to distinguish between actual costs and estimated costs. You want to be able to justify your budget items, especially those that may raise any questions. Go ahead and try to address them right now. And oftentimes what I do is if I'm putting out a spreadsheet, I just go ahead and use a footnotes feature or some asterisks, and I'll just go ahead and put a single statement at the bottom of the budget page. And then if I have the opportunity to include detailed information in the narrative, I will do that as well. If you want to have narrative, if it's allowed in your proposal, that supports these line item expenses. You may need to submit any supplemental expenses. How much is the environmental going to cost? Do you have a quote? What are the architect's fees that you've already paid for that you're looking to reimburse yourself for? Things like that. And then also be sure to include any matching funds or in-kind contributions that are in place or that you seek to obtain. Right. Supplementary materials. This is where you can include letters from partners documenting what they will do to support the program. Other attachments may raise more questions than they answer, though. So be sure to keep that in mind as you are adding any supplemental information in your section. The most common things and why I suggest just having access to them in a file or in a cabinet are your IRS tax-exempt letter, that list of board members and their affiliations, your financial statements, your most recent audit, your IRS Form 990, and the resumes of key staff members. If any of this information is really imperative, go ahead and actually pull it out and reference it in the narrative. Don't necessarily think that if you reference something in the narrative that folks are going to jump to the attachments to really look at the information. So if it's imperative, include it in the narrative. Make sure, let's just be logical, that your attachments are neat and nice, clean copies. If you have more than just a couple of attachments, number the pages to make it helpful. And if you have a lot of attachments, I recommend including an index. Let's see. All right. Funders are always looking for qualified partners. So to be successful, you need to try to write in a concise, clear, and compelling manner. You should avoid jargon, avoid undefined acronyms because they are exclusionary. Some funders, such as government funders that are in the affordable housing arena, are going to know what the other usual suspects are, the other funding sources, the other government programs. But not all proposal readers are. Businesses or foundations or wealthy donors that you're seeking are not going to know what acronyms are. They're not going to know the jargon, and they're going to feel like they're missing something. And you really want to avoid that. Be sure that you're able to support your statements. Be sure that you're not presenting assumptions or opinions as fact. Be positive. No funder wants this to be their last, your last grant. So make sure that you're demonstrating that their money goes a long way and that the program will sustain after their funding is gone. Whenever possible, use specific examples and balance your data and your facts with human interest. Balance words and balance your words with graphics and pictures. That always helps. Try to anticipate the funder's questions and answer them. Yes, always please follow the directions and find someone to read a draft of your proposal to make sure that anyone can understand it. Okay, so you submitted your proposal and you're going to hear either good news or bad news. If you hear good news, congratulations. Pat yourself on the back and then sign and return any documents that are requested promptly. Send a thank you letter. Begin communicating with your funder and adding them to mailing lists and making sure that they get things such as the annual reports and other forms or other ways that your organization communicates with the general public. And begin tracking your performance immediately. If unfortunately you do not hear good news, it's still important to send a thank you letter. And remember your manners. If it's a government proposal, you can ask for the reviewer's comments. You can call the grants officer to discuss the strengths and weaknesses in your proposal and ways it could be improved for next time. If it's from a foundation, you could ask for the ways that the proposal might be strengthened if you were to submit this elsewhere. If you frame your inquiry in this way, you're probably more likely to receive helpful information and candid information as well. Always send a thank you note to a specific staff person or any specific contact that was helpful to you throughout the application process. And if your good news was from a business or from an independent donor that doesn't have a specific funding cycle or grant requirements, then maybe that initial research you did early on wasn't quite as good as you thought it was. So in that case, maybe you want to spend some additional time trying to get to know the potential donor better and identify ways where you can develop a relationship with the business, with the individual, with their representatives, and invite them to your organization's activities or annual meetings or other opportunities where you can get to know them better. You want to nurture and develop relationships with the funder. And always, please don't give up. Keep at it. And we are nearing the end of our time for the webinar today. And before I move on to the questions and answers, I would like to thank everybody for joining us for the entire webinar. The attendance has been great. Thank you very much. And as Shantiria indicated in the very beginning of the call today, the materials and these slides and a recording of this webinar will be posted on HAC's website very shortly in the future. We hope that you have found this webinar informative, and like I said, please feel free to reach out to me after the webinar to speak further. I'm going to pause for just a moment and look at some questions and answers and try to respond to them. Let's see.
Kelly, would you like for me to go ahead and throw the questions to you?
I'm sorry, I was looking at all the people telling me to speak up. So I think I found where the questions begin here, but if I'm going too slowly, Terry, please interrupt me. There's a question, is there a rule of thumb for proposing admin if the application guidelines are silent on this? No, I'm not aware of a standard rule of thumb for admin. I think what works best is when your organization has a very good grasp of its administrative costs and can back it up with information from the budget, from the financial statements, from the audit, and then incorporate it into your budget expenses, or to indicate that if you will have the luxury of not asking them for administrative expenses, demonstrating that your administrative expenses are low and indicating how you are able to fund them through other sources. Another question. Let's see. If we're planning to expand or go into a new program area, are there particular things we should highlight or stay away from? That's a good question. So if I understand this correctly, your organization may have a track record in doing certain activities very well, but you're actually looking to do something new. You've always done single-family housing, you're looking to get into rental housing. You've always done housing development, and now you're looking to provide housing counseling services or after-school programs. I think what you want to be able to demonstrate in this situation is a combination of your strong expertise in the area as a whole, your strong capacity to administer grant funds, and the fact that you have a really strong plan in place and strong staff that are going to help guide you into this new area. And those would be the key things that I would recommend in that situation. The next question. We don't know what the future funding will be for the activity that we're proposing. and we don't want to BS about it. How can we be honest but show that we'll try to secure the funding? I think that probably depends a lot on what it is that you are seeking funding for. Certainly in affordable housing these days, we're not sure where the funds are going to come from the federal government. One of the things that some government programs go to seek to do is, if the government funding were to go away, how would this project, how would this affordable housing activity be able to continue in the future? And in that case, again, you want to simply indicate that you've given it some thought, that you have strong partnerships, that you have other resources, and that you would be able to make it work. I don't necessarily have any specific information in this case, but I think that if you're able to demonstrate the types of partners you have, the variety of funding sources that you have tapped into in the past, that you are not solely reliant on government resources. You have business relationships. You have the ability to generate some fees for service, and they could conceivably increase if they needed to. And these are the ways that you would try to address that in situations where long-term funding could be unsecure. Another question. Let's see. Oh, this is a really great idea, and we will take this into consideration. Here's somebody that's saying that they'd like to have a webinar that actually examines a sample grant proposal, and that could be pretty fun for the good things, and then also to crack a few jokes as well, I think. So that's a great idea. Thank you. Where do I get an indirect cost rate? If your organization doesn't have one, I suggest speaking with your accountant and your auditor about what you should be taking into consideration. And you should also do a little research online about all of the aspects that go into creating an indirect cost rate, and then submitting that for approval. And it's been a long time since I've worked with an organization to do that. That's a good question. I don't have the specifics on it anymore. It's probably been over 10 years since I did it. But if that's a question that you have, reach out to me. I'd love to do a little more digging on that, and so that I could very clearly point you in the right direction. But I would definitely say speak with your auditor or your accountant initially. Are there any additional questions? Type now, if so. I have loved hearing them. Or Terry, have I missed any questions?
You've not missed any questions, but let's give folks maybe another few seconds, and so I will do a little quick housekeeping here on the end. Kelly mentioned the recording and the materials will be available on HAC's website following the webinar. Also, please be on the lookout for an email containing the link to your certificate of participation, as well as a link to the webinar survey. This is a way that you let HAC know that we are bringing the most relevant content to you as far as your organizational activities. Let's see. I don't see any additional questions, and so having seen no additional questions, I'd like to thank Kelly for the wealth of information that she's provided during today's webinar, and also thank each of you again for joining us for today's webinar. Kelly, do you want to do any closing comments before we let everyone go?
No, although I don't think our website is here, and my email address is Kelly, Kelly, @ruralhome.org. So hopefully I will hear from you, and please do fill out the evaluation as well. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Please enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Goodbye.